In this presentation, we will look at the current cycle of SSE, which runs from 2022 to 2026. In particular, we will present an overview of the SSE Next Steps document, which includes Circular 56/2022. So, what is school self-evaluation? SSE is a process of collaborative internal school review that is focused on school improvement. It is envisaged as a process which is based on sound, reliable information from a range of sources and perspectives, including information about the learning experiences of children and young people, and information about how they are doing in their learning. It is also meant to be an inclusive, participatory process involving school management, all staff, students or pupils, and their parents. It is not intended to be a burden for schools. Rather, it is meant to assist schools in achieving incremental improvements for the children and young people in their school. SSE is working well in many schools, while some other schools have not made as much progress yet. The process is simply about schools asking some key questions of themselves. How are we doing? How do we know? What can we learn from what we are doing well? Are there areas of our practice that we need to improve? And how do we go about making those improvements? It is important for us all to have a shared understanding of what school self-evaluation is. Primarily, SSE is a way of working. It is a process for asking ourselves, are we doing the right things? Are we doing things right? And how do we know? SSE helps the school to engage in a process of reflection on current whole school and classroom practices. Through SSE, the school community recognises successes and areas of strength in its own work. SSE focuses on teaching and learning strategies and on students' and pupils' outcomes. It examines areas where outcomes could be better and identifies areas for further development. It focuses the school community on what it can do in the future to continue to improve. This is the SSE process that you are already very familiar with. It is important to bear in mind that this process can be used flexibly. You may be able to get through some stages quite quickly, while other stages may take some more time. You may also need to go back a step if, for example, you find that you need to gather more evidence to support your choice of focus. During the consultation process on the current phase of SSE, schools seem to have become very familiar with the 6-step process. However, if we were to simplify the process, it might look something like this. In any process of school improvement, the first step is to identify the needs that exist in your own school context. The next step is to take some action to meet those needs. You also ensure that you have a process in place to monitor and review progress as you go along and at the end of the cycle. This is an SSE mindset that can be applied to any process of improvement in your school.
This section of our presentation focuses on the current cycle of SSE, which runs from 2022 to 2026. In particular, we will present an overview of the SSE Next Steps document, which includes Circular 56/2022. In September 2022, we commenced the third cycle of school self-evaluation. Based on feedback received during extensive consultation with principals, teachers, parents, pupils and students, the third phase of SSE commenced with the review year. During this review year, schools were asked to reflect on their experience of SSE to date and to consider the impact that the COVID pandemic had on their pupils and students, and to identify and put in place supports for those pupils and students who were disproportionately impacted by the period of school closures. Phase 2 of the third cycle runs from September 2023 to September 2026. During this 3-year substantive phase of SSE, schools should continue to use the SSE process as a way of working. The process should be used to reflect on what your school is doing, to celebrate what you are doing well, and to identify priorities for improvement, taking local and national needs into account in a way that works for you in your school. It may be appropriate to take national priorities, such as well-being, into account as part of your SSE focus. While there should be sufficient evidence to allow you to make informed decisions about the quality of provision in your chosen area of focus, it is important not to overdo the collection of data. You are likely to have a lot of information already to hand, so see how you can use that information that you already have. It is also important to note that the 6-step process can be used flexibly. You can spend more time on one step and less time on others, depending on the nature of what you are focusing on. Remember, SSE is not about paperwork. It is about making informed changes to practice for the benefit of pupils and students. However, you will need to record the decisions you make in order to review those decisions and track progress, as well as having a method of communicating your decisions to the school community. Parents and pupils or students should be included in the process in a manner that is meaningful and appropriate. Depending on your area of focus, you will be best placed to decide where the involvement of parents and pupils or students will be most beneficial to the process. Here we present some additional key messages for DEIS schools. It is important to note that the DEIS plan is the SSE plan and that no additional SSE plan is required. DEIS schools should continue to identify and review targets and actions for improvement across each of the DEIS themes. Schools that are new to DEIS should gather baseline data across all themes and should use this data to establish priorities for the first year.
In this section, we will take a look at the SSE Next Steps document, which includes Circular 56/2022. SSE Next Steps is a document that lays out the rationale behind the current cycle of SSE. Circular 56/2022, which forms part of the Next Steps document, sets out the requirements in respect of the current cycle. The document supersedes all previous SSE circulars and is informed by extensive consultation. This consultation included surveys of all principals, as well as pupils and students, teachers and parents in a sample of schools. We will now delve more deeply into how schools can go about choosing a focus for their SSE. First and foremost, the SSE process should focus on the school's own priorities, particularly those relating to teaching, learning, equity and inclusion. The amount of time that a school spends on a particular area of focus will depend on the nature of that area of focus. The SSE Next Steps document provides scope for schools to allow their work to evolve at a pace that suits the work that they are doing, without being required to complete the process within a specified time frame. This is an important feature of this and future SSE cycles. There is no doubt that schools have many things to deal with, including curriculum implementation, engaging with the requirements related to, for example, well-being, digital technology and sustainability. Feedback from education partners was that all of this was potentially overwhelming for schools, and they wanted schools to have the option to streamline these requirements with the SSE process. Essentially, these are things that schools have to do anyway, regardless of SSE. Schools can therefore choose to include a national priority area as the main focus for their SSE, while, of course, taking local context factors into account. Alternatively, when engaging with areas of national importance, even if these areas are not the main focus of their SSE, schools should adopt the SSE mindset, which involves identifying the particular needs within their own context, taking action to meet those needs, and putting in place monitoring and review mechanisms to check that their actions are having the desired impact. One requirement that is outlined in the Next Steps document is that schools should use the SSE process to initiate a wellbeing promotion review and development cycle by September 2025. Many schools have already done considerable work in this area. To support you in this, the Wellbeing Policy Statement and Framework for Practice provides some very useful guidance with regard to how the SSE process can be used in this context. The findings from the surveys of principals, teachers and parents showed that there was significant potential to involve parents, pupils and students more fully and more meaningfully in the SSE process. For the participation of pupils, students and parents in SSE to be genuinely meaningful, they need to see how their views were taken into account and how they influenced the agreed actions for improvement. In this regard, reporting back to pupils, students and their parents about the outcomes of the SSE process is particularly important. Section 5 of the Next Steps document suggests a range of approaches such as surveys and focus groups which can be used to support meaningful pupil, student and parental engagement in SSE. Schools might like to consider other approaches such as engagement with the school's pupil or student council or other representative groups as appropriate and with the school's parents association or other parent groups in the school. In engaging with pupils or students during SSE, we encourage you to consider the National Framework for Children's and Young People's Participation in Decision Making and also the TUSLA Child and Youth Participation Toolkit.
In this section, we will take a look at the various supports that are available to assist schools in their work in SSE. In this third cycle of SSE, 3 levels of support will be available to schools to enable them to further develop their SSE processes. These 3 levels of support are laid out in the SSE Next Steps document. The first level relates to support from the Inspectorate and from the support services. This includes SSE advisory visits, where a member of the Inspectorate will visit a school on request to discuss the school's SSE process and to provide advice as required. These visits are non-evaluative in nature. In addition, inspectors are conducting a series of presentations for school leaders in education centres around the country. The support services are also providing presentations as well as advice, both online and in person. A number of additional resources, including posters and guidance documents, are available on the gov.ie website. During inspections, inspectors continue to take account of and report on how schools are using SSE to promote quality teaching, learning, well-being, equity and inclusion. The discussions that take place as part of these inspections will provide schools with context-based advice to support them in moving forward with the SSE process. The third level of support relates to development work, where the Inspectorate will support a small number of volunteer schools to collaboratively review an aspect of their provision. Further information on this will be made available in due course. In February 2023, a series of guides was produced to support schools in using the SSE process to reflect on their work in individual subjects. These guides are informed by inspectors' observations during inspections, the curriculum, subject specifications, and effective practice. They are designed to help schools to use the SSE process to bring about improvement in learning and teaching in individual subjects. There are primary guides for all 11 subject areas and 4 post-primary guides at the moment, all of which have been published as draft documents. It is our intention to take feedback from schools on the usefulness of these documents and to review and update the documents based on this feedback. Plans are in place to develop additional documents covering other subject areas. You will find the documents on the SSE page of the gov.ie website. Feedback on the documents can be sent to sse@education.gov.ie. Here is a snapshot of a section of one of the Looking At documents, which takes you through the 6 steps of the SSE process in an exemplar related to an individual subject area.